or a straight-up voice call, either agented or automated. It didn't really matter. In a situation where there might be fraud on their account, though, they definitely wanted a call, and in that particular case, they wanted it from a live rep. But in a lot of other circumstances, including what I would consider some pretty urgent ones, like disasters or service outages or even product recalls, customers are moving to a stance where they're willing and even interested in getting information through alternative non-voice channels. Email, for example, scores very highly on a lot of these questions. Even in some of these more urgent scenarios, we're starting to see customers actually prefer to get an automated voice message in significant numbers, about a quarter of all consumers when you look across the different scenarios. And when you think about what a change that is in sentiment from the days when any outbound phone call was seen as an intrusion, people actually prefer to hear about it by email. And we're likely actually to go much farther down this path, with consumer preferences shifting based on conditions and changing demographics of the consumer base. With email paving the way and with smartphones becoming ever more ubiquitous, the opportunity to put relevant information in the hands of customers who want it is absolutely growing. And mobile phones make it especially enticing because we can leverage the fact that all the channels, all the contact channels coexist on a single device. And the customer has ready availability to instantly respond to things like the texts or the emails by the same or different channels. And the key thing for enterprises to remember here is that customer preferences are in flux, and you can to some extent control the customer's perception by emphasizing customer convenience and relevance to their situation in your messaging. So what kinds of applications lend themselves to proactive outbound engagement? It's widespread. It is applicable in many, many different contexts. So far, it's been widely used by companies in healthcare, financial services, travel and tourism industries. And that's largely because these industries thrive on very close contact between customers and companies. And in each of them, the relationship is based on transactions and interactions that require urgency and constant fine-tuning. There's a lot of potential change inherent in traveling, for example. And there's a lot of unexpected contingencies that may affect the outcome of a trip. In healthcare, for example, companies are keeping costs under control by reaching out to customers to remind them of things like upcoming appointments, or very common to offer prescription refill notifications. These simple transactions are likely to generate an incoming call at some point. By reaching out in advance to the customer, the company can control the timing and make an extra effort to keep that interaction contained within a less expensive self-service system. And they ensure that the actual connection with the customer, the appointment itself, occurs as scheduled. That can be a significant cost-saving device. And this, by the way, is one of the key advantages of proactive engagement, which I'll talk to you in a few minutes, but that it helps control that inbound flow of contacts, and thereby does act as a key cost control mechanism for contact centers. In financial services, you see a lot of applications in areas like fraud alerts and in credit card payments. Again, those interactions that require urgency and attention. They can also be used for reminders that edge into early collections calls and that provide the financial services company with an automated IVR response mechanism to allow customers to actually pay during that interaction. Airlines have been using it. They've been keen to automate the processes involved in passenger check-in, in things like flight change and updates, upgrades. There are also transactions that happen within a known period of time, like before and during the travel process itself. And that gives companies an opportunity to stave off a pretty large portion of potential inbound call volume and to provide value to the customers at the same time. Airlines in particular have been very successful in training their customers to look at alternative contact channels before picking up the phone. They've been rolling out mobile and SMS applications to provide near real-time information that's very relevant to customers who are in transit. And in this context, proactive outbound engagement does double duty as a cost saver for the business and a value creator for the customer. Retail companies, of course, are using this as a way to minimize the inconvenience and cost of no-show delivery or field service appointments through reminders and confirmations. And in insurance, there have been some very interesting cases where companies have sent out messages to welcome new customers, to explain processes to them, and then to let them respond at their own convenience. The takeaway here, I think, is that this is a wide open field with plenty of opportunity to meld proactive engagement into existing customer service programs in ways that definitely add value to customers and at the same time, just as important for the business, help cut costs. And that's something that I want to emphasize, that this is a mutually beneficial contact mechanism. For customers, as I think is pretty clear, the benefits are all about relevance and timeliness. In other words, it's about them getting access to information that they can act on without them having to go in search of it. With the advent of mobility and all the contact channels nicely packed into that single device, it's a way for a customer to have a two-way conversation at the ready whenever he or she wants. On the business side, the value is very quantifiable in cost control terms. You can look at it as a way of deflecting or at least containing inbound voice traffic, and that would have been much more expensive and time-consuming for an agent to handle. And proactive outbound engagement is an opportunity to shape the flow of your inbound traffic, keeping it away from agents and encouraging customers to use automated response systems to contain those transactions within much more efficient self-service. If calls do require an escalation, then the contact center has a better idea of when those calls are going to come in, and they can staff accordingly. So again, these are major cost control benefits. You'll also see improvements across various other kinds of metrics, including things like customer satisfaction, revenue, customer longevity, stickiness of customers, of course, call volume and response rates. These are going to differ depending on the industry that you're in and the particulars of the contact channels and the programs that you're using. But they happen across a lot of different situations. And they happen because when the company has enough knowledge about the current state of that customer relationship that you're okay with reaching out, and you're going to do it in a way that's non-intrusive and based on what the customer is comfortable with, then the customer is predisposed to see an offer as a benefit rather than as a sales pitch. So how do you make it work in practice? As I noted, there are a lot of different kinds of outbound engagement programs that are possible. And I think we, as an industry, have really just begun to scratch the surface in reviving outbound and making it a more acceptable and more fundamental part of the customer experience. But there are some common themes that I've seen in practice that make for a successful application. First, I think, as I hope I've made clear, you really have to take into account the customer's preferences for how they want to be contacted and why they want to be contacted, under what circumstances, with what kinds of information. Most customers are willing to receive contacts about issues that are relevant, even sales offers, as long as they have a hand in deciding what the ground rules for that contact are going to be. So it's an essential best practice for companies to query customers early in the engagement lifecycle to find out what kinds of contact they'd like to receive and when. You have to use business rules to comply with regulations. Outbound is clearly most successful when it's controlled by a system that uses detailed business rules to determine the parameters of each contact. For example, you may be restricted to certain contact windows, certain time windows, or be required to keep detailed records on what customers opt into or out of. So it's critical for any business to work with its outbound solution provider to understand the requirements and for them to help keep the outbound system in compliance. You have to establish data sharing across applications. You have multiple apps that contain customer data that have to be integrated, and you have to do it in as close to real time as possible. That will make sure that the outbound message doesn't pertain to an outdated business condition or a trigger. Remember that the relevance and value is nullified in the customer's view if they're being reminded to make a payment, for example, that they already made the previous day. You also have to integrate outbound with your inbound. Again, you want to be able to channel customers to respond to your messaging with a contained, and again, preferably automated self-service inbound system. So you need to build the integrations to your inbound platform. And you need to prepare the customer base for outbound by educating them on what the benefits are. Many customers still have that reflexive notion that communications from a company are of low value and low urgency. So you need to be aware of that tendency and educate customers from the beginning or as early in the relationship as possible about the value of communications and the value, frankly, of a two-way communication process. They need to be shown concrete examples of what kinds of contacts they're going to get and in what circumstances. And finally, I think you really should consider what the cloud brings to the table in terms of scalability and flexibility. Using a cloud system makes what's called burst capability available at short notice. And this can be very important when the outbound volume is unexpected, as in some of those high urgency scenarios like emergency notifications. And these might in fact create unexpectedly high inbound volumes as a response, which taxes fixed capacity. So a cloud solution can often mitigate this problem by allowing a business to scale the service to handle those bursts. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian for a little bit more detail and further discussion about outbound engagement.
All right, thank you, Keith. Okay, so basically I wanted to first start off by talking and explaining to you a little about who Voxeo is, if you're not familiar with who we are in the industry. So we've been around a little over a decade at this point, and what we provide is the world's largest standards compliant platform for the delivery of automated outbound applications or inbound applications in the context of IVR or SMS communication. On top of this platform, because we provide it as a service, we have more than 250,000 developers and more than 45,000 companies utilizing our technology. And in the context of outbound, we have hundreds of applications that we're running billions of minutes on top of the underlying technology. So the core focus of what I want to talk about today is really explaining to you when you're looking for a platform to deliver these solutions on top of. So, you know, as Keith said, there's a marketplace for outbound notification. People want it, they're demanding the service, and it's growing as far as proactive communication is concerned. So when you're thinking about, you know, building out these applications and deploying them, what are some of the things you're going to want to think about when you're going out to look for a platform provider? And first and foremost, core to this is looking at a standards compliant platform and one that's going to be able to interop with the various different systems that a solution like this would have to communicate with. So finding a platform provider out there that may already be implementing Voice XML 3.0, which is the next gen of the Voice XML specification. Very much core to Outbound would be a platform that implements the CCXML specification, and all the other various specifications as listed below. Really, you know, when you're looking for a vendor, you want to make sure that whatever technology, whatever you know, intellectual property you're building on top of these platforms, that you're not going to be locked in. You're going to be able to find, you're going to be able to build and deploy it on this platform. And if you would like to move away from that platform in the future, you can move it to any other platform out there in this space because you've built it on top of a standards compliant platform in the first place. And this is in the context of voice automated delivery. One of the things you're going to want to be able to ask of the platform provider you're looking at is that, you know, will I have the ability to start an outbound call, and when that person or that machine picks up, I want to start that message right away. And let me give you an example of what this is talking about. If you've ever received an outbound call in the industry and it's for your pharmaceutical pickup, you pick up that phone and you'll get a period of dead air, a period of silence when you first pick up that call. Maybe it's 2 or 3 seconds. And the reason why that is that, you know, behind the scenes, these platforms are trying to determine whether you're a human or a machine, and in order to tailor fit that message. What you really want from a platform, though, is the ability to start that outbound call and then start that interaction as soon as that call is answered, and regardless of what it's answered by. Okay? So now if a human picks up the phone, they're greeted with their appropriate message, there's no delay, and the customer experience as a result is much better. And then all the while behind the scenes, that detection that is going to determine a human versus a machine is still running. Okay? So now that platform is going to be able to give you the ability to stop and restart that message and then change the customer experience. Obviously, if you encounter a human, the message will be one thing, and if you encounter a machine, it'll be a totally different message you're going to want to deliver to that user. So very important for a platform to be able to start that message right away and then run all these advanced detection algorithms behind the scenes and not impact that customer experience that's so critical to these calls. Another thing that you're going to want to look for is the ability to communicate with multiple different channels, multiple different mediums of contacting your customers. You know, voice is a great means for contacting customers, but obviously in today's day and age, you know, notifications are very heavily driven by SMS. For example, if you ever work with an airline, they're always going to want to send you an SMS as opposed to sending a voice call. And then also the other channels such as web and video. But for the proactive notification context, voice, text are two very strong channels, and you're going to want whatever platform you would like to build your applications on top of to be able to support this. And not only support it, be able to support it by through one application delivery platform. Okay, so if you're building out this robust application with all this business logic, you don't want to have to go and reinvent the wheel every time you want to be able to service a different channel. Okay, so it's very critical that the platform provider you choose be able to deliver a fully unified multi-channel approach to self-service and notification. Another thing that you want to think about is, where am I going to be able to deploy this? Okay, and there's really three sort of facets to being able to deploy an application, or where you can deploy an application. Okay, you can deploy it in a fully outsourced hosting cloud. Okay, that's really hands-off. It gives you the full elasticity and scalability and reliability that you expect from a cloud offering. You can also take a software solution, deploy it in your own data center if you have the technical staffing and the like to support this sort of implementation. You take that software, you're running on your own data centers, and that will be a private cloud offering. Okay, and then in today's day and age, I mean, the cloud's there, premise-based software solutions are there. The merging of these two and the ability to deliver a solution that works seamlessly between a hosted solution and a private solution, this hybrid model is very key. Okay, one of the reasons why this is key is that notification, emergency or otherwise, generally speaking, is very bursty traffic. Okay, you're only making these notifications when you expect the highest success rate, the highest hit rate. So you're probably calling it around 6 or 7 or 8 p.m. at night, throughout the different time zones. And as a result, your traffic profiles are very peaky. Okay, so for example, you may want to sustain your steady state traffic in a premise-based solution because of efficiencies and costing structure and the like, and then rely on a hosting platform for all sorts of bursting and reliability and for DR. Okay, so the ability for you to be able to deploy a solution on top of one application delivery platform and without having to make code changes or maintain different applications, be able to consume and utilize a hosted solution and a premise-based software solution all at the same time, giving you that fully true unified hybrid solution. And then obviously security. We talked earlier about the different use cases that are pretty prevalent in this space today for the purpose of emergency or notification contact, customer contact. Finding a service provider that's going to be able to provide you PCI Level 1 certification. Obviously, if you're dealing with the financial industry and you're doing payment card processing in these notification calls or these collection calls, it's going to be very important and required for the underlying infrastructure that you're running these applications on top of to fall into these very, very stringent security guidelines. Obviously, in the healthcare space, HIPAA is going to be an extremely important facet as well. I mean, FI data is very secure. You don't want to be leaking, customer records out there. So these are probably the two most important characteristics because they comprise the two most the industries that most heavily utilize outbound, that is healthcare and finance. Some other things that you may want to utilize is, for example, insurance providers or these collection calls or billing calls are required to record the full context of these calls for compliance purposes. Now, obviously, these calls may contain secure customer data and still have that recording requirement. So, looking for a platform that can provide you encrypted call recording is also a key feature. And then voice biometrics. I mean, whether it's password resets or doing it for a two-factor authentication or the like, voice biometrics is a very quickly and rapidly growing industry. And looking for a platform that can also deliver this capability, even if it's not a today mindset, being able to know that the platform you're deploying on top of is future-proof, and being able to give you this as something that you could extend as a value-added services to your customers is going to be key. And then capacity and reliability. I talked about the peaky, bursty sort of nature of customer proactive outreach calling. the questions you're going to want to ask are, what sort of service level agreements am I going to have in place? Do I have a 100% uptime guarantee? Am I looking at 5 nines? Am I looking at 4 nines? And inside of those 5 nines and 4 nines and even the 100%, what does that really comprise? Is it just some facets of the overall delivery? Is it the entire solution? What does this all look like so that I can get a good understanding of the type of platform that I'm going to build and deploy my applications on top of that are key and critical to the running of my business? Another thing you're going to want to find out is, what's the bursting capacity, okay? My steady state traffic, for example, only needs, the ability to do 200 concurrent calls at any given time. But, on holidays or for an event, a hurricane or some sort of thing like that, some sort of disaster, you're going to need additional capacity. Will that platform be able to deliver for you at a moment's notice the ability to burst outside of what would be the traditional realm, let's say that 200 concurrent outreaches? Will I have that ability, or will it take some number of days or weeks in order for me to get that capacity? Which in the context of these sort of event-driven requests, when there's an emergency, there's really no time. The platforms have to scale; they have to grow on demand in order for you to meet the needs of your customers and your business. Simultaneous delivery, that's in the context of call concurrency. I have 5 million people in my customer base, and I may need to call 500,000 of them during a 1-hour period of time. How many calls can I reach? How many customer contacts can I have in a given period of time? And that's going to be key as well. So you're going to be wanting to think about how many people that you have in your business to contact. And then when you go to that platform provider, when you're talking about capacity, you need to ask these questions on, what am I going to have guaranteed to me? And then what I just talked about before, what is my burst capacity? What can I do outside of the guarantee? And then a global reach. So, platforms that exist in the U.S. and maybe the majority of your customer base is in the U.S., but the ability to grow and expand on top of one platform, extending from the U.S. into Europe and into Asia Pac, for example, being able to expand and grow on a platform that is unified and deployed globally is going to be a key for you and your business. And then, asking that platform provider, as we talked about before, can you deliver me a premise solution if I so choose to? Can you deliver me a fully hosted cloud solution built on top of the same technology that I would deploy on premise? Because I don't want to have differences in my application. I don't want to have to go make changes if I need to use these things interchangeably. And then that's that whole hybrid message. Can I deploy a solution that works for me today, tomorrow, and in the future without having to look for different providers? And then, once I've made that customer outreach, once I have the user on the phone, once I have them on the phone, I need to gather analytics from them. I need to be able to get really great customer experience data as a result of these calls, and I need to be able to stuff that data into my existing business intelligence platforms that already exist in my business because I've standardized on one. Do you support my Cognos platform? Do you support my business objects platform, MicroStrategy, Oracle, etc.? And will you provide me great reporting as a result of these outbound calls? Because understanding what's happening on these calls, understanding the customer experience is going to be key to improving the calls once you actually start making the ability to tune these applications moving forward. Just wanted to run through some clinical trials, some of the examples of the solutions that some of the Voxeo customers have deployed, and obviously customers deployed them on other platforms. Clinical trial customer porting over from an existing platform where you can only do one call at a time, and you had only DTMF interaction. Want to be able to expand the speech recognition, want to be able to reach multiple different parties at any given time, and also want to be able to do it across multiple different channels, not just voice. I want to be able to do SMS, and I want to have all this great reporting and detail and accuracy that we had talked about before. Healthcare, outbound notification, huge segment of business. A specific customer reference here, serving 4 of the 5 health insurance providers out there in the space today. They fully take advantage of advanced call progress analysis features, that human versus machine, all that sort of beat detection and great sort of ability to to make these applications sing on the platform. Very time critical, doing 70 million minutes on top of 4,000 to 5,000 ports on the platform. So wanted to bullet point for you some of the strategic considerations, walk back through all the things we had already talked about. So you want to make sure that all these things are standards and you can interact with all the different back-end systems out there in existence today. You want to be able to do that assume human. You want to be able to start that outbound call, run that detection behind that scene, and make sure that the delivery is a great customer experience. Want to do it across multiple different channels, voice, SMS, and so forth. Want to make sure that you're looking at the cloud because the cloud's going to give you that reliability and elasticity that premise-based solutions don't have, and also thinking about that hybrid approach as well. Make sure that you're asking about security, HIPAA compliance, PCI compliance. Look into those SLAs, look into that capacity, that bursting, and all that good stuff. Make sure that the platform you're deploying on top of is rock solid. And make sure that you're going to be able to get great data out of that platform. Analytics, business intelligence data, customer experience information, because, it's all about, these proactive notifications are all about customer outreach, and you got to make sure that when these people are picking up the phone, the customer experience is actually as good as it possibly can be. So having the data is going to be key to that improvement. And then just to summarize, again, some use cases, different things that people are doing with these technologies. I won't go through the whole list. Keith had already walked through a lot of this sort of stuff. Bill collection, broadcast reminders, emergencies, surveys, all the things that you could possibly want to implement as business process logic as far as proactive outbound outreach. People are doing it on the various platforms today. Okay, and I guess I'll be handing over to Suresh.
So thank you. So as you've heard, proactive outbound is not just a technology or market research. Over the years, it has evolved into a more sophisticated tool that can be used to improve your business process, enhance customer service, and reduce costs. We at MicroAutomation have introduced interactive campaign management, the next level, if you will, along with a campaign management tool that makes it easy for you to manage all campaign aspects in one place and truly reap the benefits of these communications. It's really much more than just simple outbound dialing. So over the past 2 decades, MicroAutomation has worked with clients across multiple industries to implement proactive customer engagement strategies, maximizing the return on investment, which is measured by increasing the customer satisfaction and cost reduction through 5 key considerations, or what we call best practices. The first one is customer-centric, ensuring accurate and relevant data, linking outbound technologies to outbound systems, conforming to both business and regulatory rules, and establishing key performance indicators, or KPIs, based reporting and analytics, measuring actual results really against the engineering standards. Let's kind of examine each one of these with a little bit more detail. So best practice number 1, customer-centric design. An effective proactive communication strategy starts with a management tool that supports contacting customers how they want to be contacted. As Ovum pointed out with the market research, a growing number of customers prefer receiving text messages over traditional phone calls. When establishing a campaign to reach customers, it is critical to not only support all channels, the phone, text messaging, social media, to name a few, but also allow customers to select the channel or multiple channels, if they prefer, to receive information from your organization. So today's customers expect just more than a phone call. Even if that's what you begin with, you need to be able to eventually support text messaging and short email messages in the future. So the concept of proactive customer engagement is not a new trend, but the demand from customers to have information at their fingertips and expecting personalized service requires a transition from a solution that supports sending standard informational messages to one that delivers interactive content. So for example, a notification message of an appointment should also allow the customer to interact with the technology to cancel, confirm, or reschedule the appointment without the assistance of an agent. If the preferred action is to transfer to an agent, give them that option. Allow your customers to really take action after they've received their notification. The final concept in the customer-centric best practice is the support of an opt-in and opt-out policy. A proactive customer engagement strategy needs an application management tool that can provide all these options. And you need to be aware of the rules for opt-in and opt-out, and you need to be able to handle your customers' preferences. Also, it's a good idea to communicate the value that receiving these type of messages can bring to your customers. Best practice number 2, data accuracy and relevancy. With most campaigns, the customer list is prepared in advance. So in the interim, status for the customer might change. So your outbound application should allow for like a real-time check of the customer status prior to sending a text, email, or placing an outbound phone call to ensure that the reason for the call is still applicable. The application management tool should be intelligent enough to prevent calling a customer about a past due account if that customer has just spoken to an agent and made a payment. Let's also talk about post-contact back-end system updates. As soon as an automated system contacts and interacts with the customer, the transaction needs to immediately be entered into your CRM or your CIS system. If the customer calls your contact center, the agents need to have access to the date, time, and content of the outbound communication so that they can properly handle the customer inquiry. And then finally, consistency. No matter what action a customer takes, whether they visit your web portal, they speak to a customer service rep, or they perform the transaction on an IVR, all the interactions should have access to consistent information. So this can be accomplished through a common data access layer or some sort of shared data services. So for example, if you paid your bill in the IVR and then access your account on the web, it should immediately reflect that recent payment. If there needs to be a delay in applying the payment to the account, then at least the status of the updated transaction needs to be provided to the customer through this alternate vehicle. If the information is not uniform across the channels, this will prompt a call to your contact center, which is going to result in increased customer service costs and reduced levels of customer satisfaction. So this is extremely important. Best practice number 3, modify inbound channels to support your outbound campaigns. The intent of proactive customer engagement involves increasing the customer satisfaction at a reduced cost. Since the expense of making an automated outbound call or sending an email or a text message are far less than the cost of answering an inbound call, a successful strategy really needs to include syncing outbound communication with your inbound system. So for example, you might send an outbound communication to all customers that are 45 days past due on their account. While the interactive communication might support pay by phone or direct a customer to a web portal, a percentage of the customers will call back your contact center. We need to consider linking the two systems to provide an effective service. So first, the inbound IVR could be customized to answer the call with a personalized menu, such as, hello, Mr. Wright, are you calling about a message you received in regards to your overdue account? If they answer yes, the IVR would continue, would you like to utilize our pay-by-phone system to waive your late fees? The goal is not to force your customers to utilize the traditional IVR menu-driven system, but actually take advantage of the fact that it knows an outbound call has been made. Alternatively, you could use intelligent call routing to send the customer directly to the agents that process payments and avoid your customers having to attempt finding that option on the IVR menu. And as we mentioned with the data relevancy, an agent screen pop needs to display the status of the account and have a reference to the outbound communication to streamline the call. Another example, you're an electric company and a power outage occurs in a small town, and you launch a proactive message to address the situation and kind of let customers know that their power will be restored soon. What you want to do then is probably allow for a front-end message on the IVR for those who receive this message in case they're calling for a status update. Something like, are you calling about the message you received concerning the power outage in Smithtown, Ohio? If they answer yes, we respond by, we anticipate that the power will be restored approximately 8:45 this evening. Would you like to call back when the power is restored? And they could answer yes and continue on. This allows the customers to quickly get the information they need without having to go through a lot of extraneous IVR menus. Best practice number 4, business and regulatory rules. These are extremely important. A campaign management application like our Micro Messenger solution needs to support all business and regulatory rules, including state and local, national do not call lists for any campaigns that target non-customers. So a campaign management tool such as the manager provided with the Micro Messenger product needs to kind of support state, company, and federal do not call lists to ensure that the number is eligible prior to us contacting them. So this is extremely important to adhere to state and local laws. Time of day considerations. You need a campaign management tool that allows you to set the delivery window. So as Brian mentioned, one of the advantages of using an industry-leading cloud service like Voxeo is to have the bandwidth to reach nearly unlimited customers during these small windows, something that might not be possible with on-premise deployment. And then finally, location-based time zone. An effective campaign management solution needs to communicate with customers based on their location, using a postal code to set the time zone over an area code. With phone number portability, which means that a customer is no longer tied to a particular location based on an area code, the zip code is increasingly important. So using the zip code instead of the area code ensures that you're not contacting customers at off hours and allows you to expand your calling hours. If a zip code is not available, area code can be utilized as a fallback. And then finally, the ability to set a callback rate based on the disposition or outcome of the previous phone call. The system should provide for flexible rules with subsequent action depending on the call results. To maximize the connect rate with customers, you need to set the callback frequency differently for calls that result in a busy signal versus a ring no answer versus leaving a message on an answering machine. Best practice number 5, KPI-based analytics. As a part of proactive customer engagement strategy, KPIs, or key performance indicators, are needed to measure the effectiveness of the campaign. In addition to comparing KPIs against business standards or industry engineered standards, it allows you to also use objective measures to modify a campaign for optimal performance. So that's going to increase customer satisfaction and ROI. So here's some good examples of KPIs. The connect rate, for example, as measured by the successful delivery of emails, text messages, and the number of answered calls versus voicemail message left. Or a campaign-specific KPI, the number of past due accounts that were brought current, or the number of appointments that were either confirmed or rescheduled or canceled. Using this type of information, you'll be able to track the effectiveness of your proactive outreach on a campaign level and determine how it impacts your overall customer service levels. From there, you can determine any optimization needed to increase the effectiveness of the campaign. So to review, MicroAutomation recommends using an interactive campaign management solution to optimize proactive customer engagement strategies, focusing on primarily 5 best practices: customer-centric design, ensuring accurate and relevant data, linking your outbound technology to your inbound systems, conforming to both business and regulatory rules, and finally, establishing key performance indicators, KPIs, based on reporting and analytics, measuring the actual results against the engineering standards. These best practices are all based on over 20 years of contact center experience and many enterprise-level deployments that MicroAutomation has done. So let's take a look at the example that everybody can relate to, both if you're a consumer or even if you're as a business person. So this field service example highlights some of the best practices, the impact on customer service levels, and the reduction in operating costs for field service appointments. We work with a utility company of ours who did not proactively notify or confirm scheduled appointments with the customers. An average field service rep could visit 8 to 9 customers per day, but typically missed appointments that cut that number in half to a corporate-wide average of only 4. there. Thank you. In the first iteration, the customer utilized our micro messenger solution to simply deliver a custom message to each customer 24 hours prior to the scheduled appointment. The reminder provided details on the appointment, the date and the time, the access to the utility devices located in the backyard or interior of the home, etc. After the first iteration of the outbound notification solution, the customer saw a 25 to 30% reduction in missed appointments, causing the number of completed daily service calls to increase to 5 to 6 per day. In the second iteration, the customer implemented an interactive communication in which the customer could confirm an appointment, cancel an appointment, or reschedule an appointment, all utilizing automation with no agent involvement. It was the second generation of truly engaging the customer that delivered the true ROI to this customer. They had a 2-hour appointment window was reduced to a 30-minute window, which increased customer satisfaction with the customers. The number of daily appointments actually increased on average from 11 to 12, up from the initial average from 8 to 9. And the number of missed appointments decreased to under 10%, which was a huge cost savings for the field service operations. So think about how you can use some of these ideas to improve your business. Okay, now I'm going to hand it back over to Evan for questions and answers, I believe. Evan?
Thank you very much, Suresh. So I have a few questions from our audience, and I'll go ahead and unmute our presenters. The first question I'll direct towards Brian Feinberg. Is contracted capacity only available to outbound campaigns, or can it be dynamically used for inbound as well?
So from a platform perspective, you should be looking at a platform that does not distinguish between inbound and outbound capacity. If I have a contracted pool of capacity ports on that network, and let's say it's the 200 number, I would expect to be able to use all of that 200 for inbound or outbound, or a spread of the mix. That should not be a consideration. Those should be uniform.
And as a follow-up question, Brian, how does bursting work? Is the capacity available on demand?
Yes, I mean, networks should be deployed in a way that inherently allows for elasticity and burstability. I mean, that's the whole concept behind the cloud. So when I'm deploying in a network, take the example for here at Voxeo. I mean, we've got 3 data centers here in the U.S. that we're going to use for North American traffic, and when I deploy a 500 port deployment, for example, I'm going to put 250 ports in each of those 3 sites, giving me a total of 750. So that's inherent elasticity right there, right? I've already got a 250 port buffer on top of my already committed SLA.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Suresh. What size organizations are you seeing take advantage of an outbound solution?
Really, it ranges from the smallest organizations to very, very large organizations. The type of ROIs that we see on these type of solutions really can transcend both small and large organizations, and we're seeing some very huge results from these type of deployments, especially if you get into the interactive management, which is so key to this type of solution.
A follow-up to that, how long does an outbound solution take to implement?
Well, of course, that always depends on the level of complexity of the outbound solution, but depending on whether it's a cloud-based solution or a CPE solution that we would deploy at a customer site, it can take anywhere from weeks to several months to deploy. One of the great things with the Voxeo platform, for example, is that it provides a lot of tools to very quickly allow us to ramp up such an outbound campaign. And the fact that MicroAutomation has already developed a product called MicroMessenger that is a true interactive call management application really allows us to shorten that implementation time into the weeks and just few months type of environment.
Okay, and well, I wanted to thank everyone very much for attending. I wanted to thank our presenters, Brian Feinberg of Voxeo, Suresh Gursahani of MicroAutomation, and Keith Dawson of Ovum. We're going to be emailing all of our attendees a brand new Ovum white paper called Best Practices in Proactive Outbound Customer Contact, along with a link to watch the webinar on demand. Feel free to contact us with any questions on how to apply these best practices to your organization. And for anybody that we did not have a chance to answer your question live, I've got your contact information, and I will make sure to follow up as soon as possible to get your questions answered. So thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day to attend, and I hope you appreciated the presentation.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Keith.